Ethan Cole, a single father worn thin after 2 grueling years of balancing fatherhood with the relentless demands of his office job, was facing a critical deadline. He needed to deliver a crucial report, and he needed to deliver it on time. But a moment of distraction, a wrong turn, a door mistakenly pushed open, was all it took to shatter his carefully constructed world. He wasn't met with the sterile environment of a conference room, but with Vivian Harlow, the formidable billionaire CEO of Harlow Innovations. She was caught in the act of changing clothes, completely vulnerable, utterly unprepared for an unexpected encounter. An impossible situation had unfolded, a collision of 2 worlds that were never meant to meet. And in that instant, Ethan's career, his carefully planned future, and even his heart, were all teetering on the brink of upheaval. Could a single, unforeseen mistake truly hold the power to redefine his entire existence? Ethan found himself paralyzed in the hallway, his back pressed firmly against the cool surface of the wall. A tremor ran through his hands, a tangible manifestation of the shock that gripped him. The report folder, containing weeks of painstaking work, had slipped from his grasp, landing somewhere near his feet with a soft thud. He was unable to move, unable to draw breath, his thoughts consumed by the indelible image seared into his memory. Vivian Harlow, partially undressed, her expression a mask of surprise and something akin to icy fury, her cold gray eyes fixed upon him. He was done. Finished. 2 years of dedicated service at Harlow Innovations, seemingly erased in a mere 3 seconds of unintended intrusion. The very building around him seemed to hum with a menacing energy. The harsh glare of fluorescent lights, the muffled sounds of distant conversations, the faint, almost ethereal ping of elevator doors, all contributed to a sense of unreality, a feeling akin to the moments preceding a catastrophic car crash, when time warps and stretches, allowing you to witness the impending disaster yet rendering you powerless to prevent it. A woman from the accounting department walked past, her footsteps echoing in the sterile hallway. She cast a fleeting glance in his direction, but showed no sign of slowing down, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil raging within him. Ethan willed himself to move, to break free from the spell of shock. He bent down, retrieved the fallen folder, straightened his tie with trembling fingers, and forced himself to walk towards the elevators, his legs feeling foreign and unresponsive. He had woken up that morning just like any other morning. The shrill, unwelcome blare of the 5:30 a.m. alarm clock jolted him awake. From the adjacent room, Lily's sweet, innocent voice called out, a hopeful question hanging in the air. "Is it Pancake Day, Daddy?" It wasn't Pancake Day. It was never Pancake Day on Tuesdays, but she asked anyway, her 6-year-old heart still clinging to the belief that her father possessed the power to conjure up small miracles before the chaos of coffee and carpool consumed them. He had kissed her forehead, the soft warmth of her skin a comforting reassurance. He made toast, carefully packed her lunch, meticulously cutting off the crusts in the precise way she preferred. He drove her to school, listening to her sing along to some saccharine pop song about butterflies, her voice filled with unadulterated joy. He dropped her off, watching as she ran towards the school gate, her small backpack bouncing against her back. That image, that fleeting moment, always remained with him throughout the day. The oversized backpack, a symbol of her small stature and the weight of the world she was slowly beginning to navigate. The unwavering trust in her eyes, the fact that she never looked back, secure in the knowledge that he would always be there to greet her upon her return. Then, he had driven to Harlow Innovations, resigned to parking in the distant lot, as the prime spots were reserved for the senior staff. He rode the elevator to the 8th floor, navigated the labyrinthine open office plan, and settled at his desk in the forgotten corner, where he remained largely unnoticed unless something went catastrophically wrong. That was his life. Wake up, keep Lily alive and thriving, keep his job secure, repeat. He was never supposed to be anywhere near the executive floor today, but his manager had called in sick, succumbing to some virulent flu. The quarterly report, a critical document, needed to be delivered. Someone had to step up. Ethan, driven by his ingrained sense of responsibility and the ever-present fear of losing his job, had volunteered. He always volunteered, always striving to be the dependable one, the one who could be counted on to show up, to get the job done, to never complain. Conference room B, 14th floor. That was all his manager had said. His voice raspy with illness. Ethan had taken the elevator, walked down the pristine hallway, lined with glass walls and adorned with abstract art that probably cost more than his annual salary. He had checked his watch. 7 minutes until the board meeting. Plenty of time. He had reached for the door handle, pushed it open, and his carefully constructed life had imploded. Now, he sat slumped in his car in the parking lot, the harsh midday sun beating down on the windshield. It was nearly noon. He had no recollection of leaving the building, no memory of the long, agonizing walk to his car. He stared blankly at the steering wheel, his mind still reeling from the morning's events. His phone buzzed, breaking through the fog of his despair. A text message from the school, a mundane reminder about early dismissal on Friday. He deleted it without a second thought, the mundane reminder only serving to amplify the chaos in his own life. His hands continued to shake, betraying the depth of his inner turmoil. Vivian Harlow did not know his name. She had never looked at him before today, never acknowledged his existence. She was a distant figure, a name you encountered in company-wide emails, a fleeting presence glimpsed in the glass-walled conference rooms on the top floor, a symbol of success showcased in the annual reports that celebrated yet another record-breaking year. She wore impeccably tailored suits, spoke in clipped, precise sentences, and possessed the unsettling ability to fire people with the same cold efficiency one might use to cancel a subscription service. Within the company, she was known as the Ice Queen, a moniker whispered behind closed doors, never uttered in her presence. But everyone knew. Everyone felt the chilling aura that surrounded her. Ethan had seen her once in the lobby, a brief, almost imperceptible encounter. She had walked past him without so much as a glance, her gaze fixed on some distant point. He had felt insignificant, invisible, which was perfectly acceptable. Invisible was safe. He was not invisible anymore. His phone rang, the shrill sound cutting through the silence of the car. An unknown number flashed on the screen. He hesitated, then let it go to voicemail. It rang again, the same insistent number. He reluctantly answered, bracing himself for the inevitable. "Mr. Cole, this is Jessica from Executive Affairs. Miss Harlow would like to see you in her office at 2 o'clock today. 14th floor. Suite A. Please confirm." Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. He was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by a mixture of dread and disbelief. The woman on the phone waited patiently, the silence stretching between them. "I'll be there," he finally managed to stammer, his voice barely a whisper. The line went dead, leaving him alone with his escalating anxieties. He sat in the car for another 20 minutes, lost in a vortex of negative thoughts. Then, with a sigh of resignation, he started the engine and drove to a nearby coffee shop. He ordered a drink he didn't even taste, found a table by the window, and watched the world go by. Normal people with normal problems, people who had not just inadvertently committed career suicide. At 1:45, he drove back to Harlow Innovations, parked the car, took the elevator to the 14th floor, and walked down the hallway towards Suite A, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. The door was made of solid wood, exuding an air of expensive exclusivity. A small, understated plaque displayed the words, "Vivian Harlow, Chief Executive Officer." He hesitated for a moment, gathering his courage, then knocked softly. "Come in." Her voice was calm, controlled, betraying no hint of the turmoil he had witnessed earlier. It was the same voice that had remained silent when he had stumbled backward, mortified, and slammed the door shut 3 hours ago. Ethan stepped inside. The office was vast, significantly larger than his entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The furniture was minimalist, almost austere. A desk that appeared to have been carved from a single piece of black marble dominated the room. Vivian sat behind it, composed and unreadable. She wore a different suit now, a sophisticated charcoal gray, perfectly pressed and tailored to her slim frame. Her hair was pulled back in a severe style, emphasizing the sharp angles of her face. Her expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed mask that revealed nothing of her inner thoughts. "Sit," she commanded, her voice devoid of warmth. He sat, his movements stiff and awkward. She looked at him for what felt like an eternity, her gaze unwavering. He tried to meet her eyes, to project an air of confidence and contrition, but failed miserably. Instead, he found himself staring at the sharp edge of her desk, focusing on the minute details of the polished surface. "Mr. Cole, you delivered the quarterly report this morning." It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, delivered with an undercurrent of unspoken accusation. Yes. Yes, I was supposed to leave it in conference room B. Yes, I did not leave it in conference room B. No, I opened the wrong door. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to. The words swirled in his head, a jumbled mess of apologies and explanations. She held up one hand, silencing him before he could utter a single word. "I read your proposal last month," Vivian said, her tone neutral, almost detached. "The one about streamlining client onboarding. Your manager dismissed it, said it was too ambitious for someone at your level." Ethan blinked, momentarily taken aback. He had no idea where this was going, what bizarre game she was playing. "I disagreed," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "I thought it showed initiative, clear thinking, an understanding of our inefficiencies that most senior staff do not have." She opened a folder on her desk, slid a single sheet of paper across to him. "I am launching a pilot program. 6 months, small team. Your proposal as the foundation. I want you to lead it." Ethan stared at the paper, his mind struggling to process the information. It was a project outline, detailing the scope and objectives of the proposed pilot program. His name was already typed at the top, next to the title, Project Lead. "I don't understand," he stammered, his voice thick with confusion. Vivian leaned back in her chair, her expression unchanged. "This morning was unfortunate for both of us. But it does not change the fact that you have a good idea and this company needs good ideas. I do not make business decisions based on embarrassment. I make them based on value. You have value. Do you want the position or not?" Ethan's brain was struggling to reconcile the reality before him with the expectations he had harbored upon entering this office. He had walked in expecting to be fired, possibly escorted out by security. Instead, he was being handed the opportunity he had been dreaming of since he first started working at Harlow Innovations, an opportunity to prove his worth, to make a real difference. "I want it," he said, his voice filled with a newfound resolve. "Good. You will report directly to me. We will meet twice a week to review progress. I expect results. I expect professionalism. I expect you to prove that my decision was correct. Understood?" "Understood," he repeated, his voice more confident this time. "Understood." She stood, extended her hand. He stood as well, shook it. Her grip was firm, brief, conveying a sense of unwavering determination. "Jessica will send you the details. Your first meeting is Thursday at 9 o'clock. Do not be late." "I won't be." He turned to leave, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events. "Mr. Cole," she said, stopping him in his tracks. He turned back, his eyes meeting hers. Vivian's expression was still unreadable, but something in her eyes had shifted, a subtle softening that he couldn't quite decipher. "The door was unlocked," she said quietly. "I should have locked it. The mistake was not entirely yours." He did not know how to respond to that unexpected concession. He simply nodded, acknowledging her statement, and left the office, walking down the hallway in a daze. The elevator doors closed, sealing him in the small metal box. He leaned against the wall, let out a breath he had been holding for hours, a release of pent-up tension. His phone buzzed, jolting him back to reality. A reminder: pick up Lily at 3:15. He checked his watch. He had time. Ethan drove to the school, parked the car, and waited. When Lily came running out, her backpack bouncing against her small frame, He scooped her up in his arms and held her tight, burying his face in her hair. "Daddy, you're squishing me," she protested, her voice muffled. But she was laughing, her infectious joy washing over him. "Sorry, kiddo. Just happy to see you. Did you have a good day?" Ethan sat her down, opened the car door, and helped her into her booster seat. "Yeah," she said, buckling herself in. "Yeah," he echoed, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I think I did." He had no idea what the future held, what challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in 2 years, he felt something other than exhaustion, something more profound than the relentless grind of daily life. He felt hope, a fragile yet persistent ember glowing in the darkness. The first meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 9 a.m. Ethan arrived promptly at 8:45, meticulously prepared and armed with a portfolio of notes he had painstakingly crafted until midnight the previous night. He sat in the waiting area outside Vivian's office, his tie feeling uncomfortably tight around his neck. He loosened it, then tightened it again, a nervous habit he couldn't seem to control. Jessica glanced at him from her desk, her expression impassive, but said nothing. At precisely 9 o'clock, the office door swung open, revealing Vivian standing in the doorway, as composed and unreadable as ever. She wore the same sharp suit, exuding an aura of power and control. "Come in," she said, her voice cool and professional. He followed her inside. She gestured to the small conference table by the window, a space bathed in the soft morning light. He sat. She sat across from him, maintaining a respectful distance. Between them lay a leather folder, embossed with the Harlow Innovations logo, and a sleek silver pen that probably cost more than his monthly car payment. "Walk me through your implementation strategy," Vivian said, her gaze intense and unwavering. Ethan opened his portfolio, took a deep breath, and began talking, outlining his plan with meticulous detail. She listened without interrupting, her eyes fixed on him, analyzing every word, every gesture. He could not discern her reaction, could not tell if she was impressed or bored or simply calculating how quickly she could replace him if he failed to meet her expectations. When he finished, after what felt like an eternity, she tapped one finger against the table, a slow, deliberate gesture. "Your timeline is optimistic," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. "I can adjust it," he offered, his heart sinking slightly. "Do not adjust it," she countered, her tone firm. "Optimism is useful. Just be prepared for delays." She pulled out her own folder, slid a budget breakdown across to him. The numbers were significantly higher than he had anticipated, a testament to the scale of the project and the resources she was willing to invest. "You will have access to these resources," she said, her voice leaving no room for doubt. "Use them wisely. I do not tolerate waste." "Understood," he replied, his voice filled with renewed confidence. They worked through the logistics for the next hour, delving into the specifics of software needs, personnel allocation, and reporting structures. It was all business, professional, efficient, a testament to Vivian's unwavering focus. But every time their eyes met, Ethan felt the unspoken weight of what had happened on Tuesday, the memory of the open door, the frozen moment, the mortification. If Vivian felt it too, she gave no indication. When the meeting concluded, she stood, extended her hand. He shook it, her grip as firm and brief as before. "Next meeting is Monday. Same time. Bring preliminary data." "I will." He left the office, walked back to his desk on the 8th floor, his mind buzzing with ideas and possibilities. His coworker, Daniel, leaned over the partition, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Heard you got a promotion," he said, his voice laced with envy. "Working directly with Harlow now." "Something like that." Daniel whistled low, his expression a mixture of admiration and apprehension. "Rather you than me. That woman does not smile ever. Good luck, man." Ethan did not respond. He simply opened his laptop and got to work, determined to prove himself worthy of the opportunity he had been given. The second meeting went the same way, meticulously planned and executed with unwavering professionalism. focused on the data, the milestones, the challenges ahead. No mention of Tuesday, no acknowledgement of the awkward encounter that had brought them together. The third meeting. The fourth. By the end of the second week, Ethan had stopped checking his tie every 5 minutes. He had stopped rehearsing his updates in the elevator, stopped second-guessing every word he uttered. Vivian was demanding, yes, but she was also fair, providing clear direction and unwavering support. She asked hard questions, expected clear answers, but she also listened, truly listened, which was more than most executives did. On the fifth meeting, something shifted. A subtle crack in Vivian's carefully constructed facade. Ethan was explaining a bottleneck in the client intake process when Vivian's phone buzzed. A discreet vibration on the marble desk. She glanced at it, frowned, and silenced it with a flick of her wrist. 2 minutes later, it buzzed again, the insistent vibration disrupting the flow of their conversation. She ignored it, her gaze remaining fixed on Ethan. "Continue," she instructed, her voice unwavering. He continued, picking up where he had left off. The phone buzzed a third time, its persistent intrusion impossible to ignore. Vivian picked it up, read the message, and her jaw tightened, a barely perceptible sign of irritation. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clipped. She stood abruptly, walked to the window, and answered the call, turning her back to Ethan. "Mother, I told you I'm in a meeting," she said, her tone sharp. "No, I am not coming to the gala. We discussed this. I have a company to run. Goodbye." She ended the call, stood there for a moment with her back to him, her shoulders tense. When she turned around, her expression was smooth again, controlled, the mask firmly in place. But Ethan had glimpsed the crack, the vulnerability that lay beneath the surface, just for a second. "Where were we?" she asked, her voice regaining its composure. "The intake process," he replied, trying to ignore the undercurrent of tension in the room. They finished the meeting, but something had undeniably changed. She was not just the Ice Queen anymore, the unapproachable CEO who existed on a different plane. She was a person, with a mother who called during work hours, with a life outside the sterile confines of these glass walls. The next meeting, Vivian asked about his daughter, a casual question, almost an afterthought. "How old is your daughter?" Ethan looked up from his notes, surprised by the personal inquiry. 6. "Her name is Lily. Child care must be difficult with the schedule," she observed, her tone neutral. "I manage," he replied, his voice guarded. "My neighbor helps when I work late." Vivian nodded, acknowledging his statement, but did not elaborate. But the fact that she had asked at all felt significant, a small step towards breaking down the barriers between them. By the fourth week, they had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, a predictable pattern of meetings, discussions, and shared goals. The meetings were still professional, efficient, but the edges had softened, the atmosphere less tense. Vivian even made a dry joke about corporate bureaucracy, a rare display of levity that caught Ethan off guard. He laughed, genuinely amused, and she almost smiled, a fleeting expression that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Almost. One afternoon, they ended a meeting early, having covered all the agenda items in record time. Ethan stood to leave, gathering his notes. Vivian glanced at her watch, her expression thoughtful. "Have you had lunch?" He had not. He had been so focused on the presentation that he had forgotten to eat. "No," he admitted. "There is a decent place 2 blocks down," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "We can continue the discussion there." It was not an invitation, not a date, not anything personal. It was simply an extension of the meeting, a practical solution to a logistical challenge. That was what Ethan told himself as they rode the elevator down together, as they walked side by side through the bustling lobby, as they sat across from each other in a quiet bistro, a place where the tables had actual tablecloths and the menu did not list prices. They talked about the project, analyzing market trends and discussing competitor analysis. Then Vivian asked about Lily again, her curiosity piqued. "What does she want to be when she grows up?" Ethan smiled, his face softening at the mention of his daughter. "Last week it was a veterinarian. This week it is an astronaut. Next week it will be something else entirely." She sounds adaptable, Vivian observed, a hint of admiration in her voice. She is, he replied, his tone filled with affection. She has to be. Vivian set down her fork, her gaze becoming more intense. How long have you been on your own? 2 years, he said, his voice tinged with sadness. Her mother left when Lily was 4. Decided parenthood was not for her. I haven't heard from her since. He had not meant to say that much, had not intended to reveal so much of his personal life. But Vivian's expression had shifted, something gentler, something almost like understanding flickering in her eyes. That must be difficult, she said softly. It is, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But Lily is worth it. She is the only thing that makes sense. Vivian looked at him for a long moment, her gaze searching, probing. Then, she picked up her fork again, breaking the intensity of the moment. You are doing well with the project, she said, her tone regaining its professional composure. Better than I expected. Thank you, he replied, his heart swelling with pride. They finished lunch, walked back to the office, and did not mention the personal conversation again. But the next week, she suggested lunch again, and the week after that, it became a routine, a regular occurrence in their otherwise regimented schedules. Meetings, lunch, conversations that started about work and drifted into other things, personal anecdotes and shared observations. Vivian mentioned her mother's relentless social calendar, her endless stream of galas and charity events. Ethan talked about Lily's obsession with building elaborate blanket forts in the living room. Neither of them acknowledged what was happening, the slow, subtle shift in their relationship. That the walls were coming down, brick by brick. That the Ice Queen was melting, revealing the woman beneath. Then came the afternoon in late October, the day that everything changed, the day that the unspoken tension finally reached its breaking point. Ethan was in Vivian's office, reviewing quarterly projections, poring over spreadsheets and analyzing data. His phone rang, the unexpected sound breaking the intense concentration. He glanced at the screen, the school. He silenced it quickly, not wanting to disrupt the meeting. 30 seconds later, it rang again, the same insistent number flashing on the screen. He hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern. Answer it, Vivian said, her voice calm but firm. He did, bracing himself for the worst. Hello, Mr. Cole. This is Principal Matthews. Lily is in the office. She says no one came to pick her up. We have been calling your emergency contact, but there is no answer. Ethan's stomach dropped, a cold pit of dread forming in his gut. What time is it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. School dismissal was at 3 o'clock. He had forgotten, completely forgotten. He had been so focused on the presentation, so consumed by the numbers, that he had lost track of time. His neighbor was supposed to pick up Lily today, but his neighbor was not answering, his calls going straight to voicemail. I will be there in 20 minutes, Ethan said, his voice filled with remorse. He stood abruptly, grabbed his jacket, and prepared to rush out the door. I am so sorry. I have to go. I will send the updated numbers tonight. He was halfway to the door when Vivian spoke, her voice stopping him in his tracks. I will drive you, she said, her eyes meeting his. What? He was stunned by the unexpected offer, unsure if he had heard her correctly. She was already standing, already reaching for her coat, her movements efficient and decisive. Your car is in the far lot. Mine is in the executive garage. We will be there faster. Come on. They took the elevator to the underground garage, the silence between them thick with unspoken tension. Vivian's car was a sleek black sedan, a luxury vehicle that probably cost more than Ethan's annual salary. She drove with the same precision she brought to everything else, her movements efficient, controlled, but undeniably fast. Ethan called the school again, his voice trembling, and assured them that he was on the way. His hands were shaking, a physical manifestation of the guilt and anxiety that consumed him. He had never forgotten Lily, not once in 2 years of single parenthood. He was the reliable one, the one who always showed up, the one who never let her down. She will be fine, Vivian said, her voice calm and steady, a soothing balm to his frayed nerves. "I forgot her," he said, his voice filled with self-reproach. "You were working," she countered, her tone surprisingly understanding. "It happens. It should not happen," he insisted, his voice laced with guilt. Vivian glanced at him, her expression softening. "You are not a bad father because you lost track of time once. You are human." They pulled up in front of the school. Ethan jumped out of the car, ran inside, his heart pounding in his chest. Lily was sitting in the office, her backpack on her lap, her face red and blotchy. She had been crying. "Daddy," she sobbed, running towards him. He scooped her up in his arms, held her tight, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry, kiddo. I'm so sorry." "You forgot me?" she said into his shoulder, her voice muffled by his embrace. "I know," he replied, his voice choked with emotion. "I messed up. It will not happen again." He carried her outside, cradling her in his arms. Vivian was standing by the car, waiting patiently. Lily looked at her with wide, curious eyes. "Who is that?" Lily whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of shyness and curiosity. "That is Miss Harlow," Ethan replied, his voice soft and gentle. "She works with Daddy. She gave us a ride." Vivian stepped forward, crouched down so she was eye level with Lily, her movements surprisingly graceful. "Hello, Lily," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "I've heard a lot about you." Lily studied her for a moment, her eyes assessing. "You're pretty," she declared, her voice filled with childlike honesty. A genuine smile flickered across Vivian's face, a rare and precious sight. Genuine, brief, but undeniably real. "Thank you," she replied, her voice filled with warmth. "You're very pretty too. Do you like butterflies?" "I do," Lily exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. "Do you want to see my butterfly drawing? I made it in art class." "I would love to," Vivian replied, her voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. Lily climbed into the back seat, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, and showed it to Vivian, her face beaming with pride. They looked at the drawing together, Vivian asking questions and Lily answering with unrestrained enthusiasm. For the first time since Ethan had met her, Vivian looked completely at ease, relaxed and unburdened by the weight of her responsibilities. She drove them home, navigating the traffic with the same skill and precision she brought to everything else. Ethan tried to apologize again for the inconvenience, his guilt still gnawing at him. Vivian waved him off, dismissing his apology with a simple gesture. "It was no inconvenience," she said, her voice sincere. They pulled up in front of Ethan's apartment building. It was not much, a small two-bedroom in a complex that had seen better decades, a far cry from the luxurious surroundings Vivian was accustomed to. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt, leaned forward, and looked at Vivian with hopeful eyes. "Do you want to come inside?" she asked, her voice filled with anticipation. "We have juice boxes." Vivian looked at Ethan, her gaze questioning. He should say no, should thank her for the ride and let her leave, should maintain the boundaries, protect himself from the inevitable complications. But he did not. "You are welcome to come in," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. She turned off the engine, her decision made. Inside, the apartment was small but clean, a cozy sanctuary filled with the warmth of home. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator, a colorful tapestry of childlike imagination. Her toys were scattered across the living room floor, a testament to her playful spirit. Vivian did not seem to notice the clutter, did not betray any sign of discomfort. She sat on the couch while Lily brought her a juice box and 3 more butterfly drawings, eager to share her creations with her new friend. Ethan made coffee, stood in the kitchen, and watched them, a sense of surreal contentment washing over him. Vivian listened to Lily talk about her day with the same unwavering focus she brought to board meetings, her attention undivided. She asked follow-up questions, laughed at Lily's jokes, and Lily, who was usually shy around strangers, blossomed under the attention, her confidence soaring. An hour later, Lily yawned, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Ethan checked the time. Almost 6 o'clock. "Bath time, kiddo," he announced, his voice gentle. "Can Miss Harlow stay for dinner?" Lily pleaded, her eyes wide with hope. Ethan looked at Vivian, his heart pounding in his chest. She met his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the growing connection between them. "I should go," Vivian said, but she did not stand up, her body language betraying her hesitation. "Please stay," Lily begged, her voice filled with childlike desperation. "Daddy makes good spaghetti." Vivian smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that transformed her face. "I am sure he does," she replied, her voice warm and affectionate. She stayed. Ethan cooked, feeling a surge of unexpected joy. Vivian helped Lily set the table, the two of them working together seamlessly. They ate together, the conversation easy, light, and filled with laughter. Lily asked Vivian about her job, her innocent questions cutting through the complexities of corporate life. Vivian answered in terms a 6-year-old could understand, explaining her role in a simple, engaging way. Lily told stories about school, about her friends, about her art projects. Vivian listened, her eyes sparkling with amusement and genuine interest. After dinner, Ethan put Lily to bed, tucking her in and reading her favorite bedtime story. When he came back to the living room, Vivian was standing by the door with her coat on, ready to leave. "Thank you for today," Ethan said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You already thanked me 3 times, she said, her voice teasing. "I know, but I mean it," he insisted, his eyes meeting hers. She looked at him the same way she had looked at him in the restaurant, in the car, in the office, like she was seeing something she had not expected to find. Something that challenged her preconceived notions and forced her to reconsider her carefully constructed world. "She is wonderful," Vivian said, her voice soft and filled with admiration. "You are doing a good job." "I forgot to pick her up," he said, his voice tinged with guilt. "And you fixed it. That is what matters." They stood in the doorway, the space between them feeling smaller than it should, charged with an unspoken energy. "I should let you go," Ethan said, his voice husky with emotion. "Yes, you should," she replied, her gaze intense. Neither of them moved, their bodies drawn to each other by an invisible force. Vivian reached for the door handle, then stopped, turned back, her eyes searching his. "The door you opened," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "That Tuesday. Maybe it was not the wrong door." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean?" He stammered, his mind racing. "I mean," she said, her voice filled with a newfound vulnerability. "Maybe it was exactly the door you were supposed to open." She left before he could respond, leaving him standing in the empty hallway, his heart pounding in his chest. He listened to her footsteps fade away, then closed the door, leaned against it, and let the weight of her words sink in. Everything had just changed, irrevocably altered by a chance encounter and a shared moment of vulnerability. Over the next 3 weeks, Vivian came to dinner twice more, her visits becoming a cherished routine. She brought Lily books about space, about butterflies, about all the things that captured her imagination. She sat on the floor and helped build elaborate blanket forts, transforming the living room into a magical kingdom. She laughed at Lily's jokes, her eyes sparkling with joy, and she looked at Ethan when she thought he was not watching, her gaze filled with a mixture of tenderness and longing. He was always watching, always aware of her presence, always captivated by the way she interacted with his daughter, the way she softened around her, the way she allowed herself to be vulnerable. One evening in late November, after Lily was in bed, tucked away in her dreams, they sat on the porch, the air crisp and cold. The street was quiet, the silence broken only by the occasional passing car. Vivian had her coat wrapped tight around her, her expression thoughtful. "I have been thinking," she said, her voice barely audible above the gentle breeze. "About what?" Ethan asked, his heart pounding in his chest. "About doors? About mistakes? About the things we tell ourselves to stay safe?" Vivian looked at him, her gaze intense and unwavering. "What have you been telling yourself? That I don't have time for this? That it is inappropriate? That I am your boss and you are my employee and there are rules for a reason? She paused, taking a deep breath. Those are good reasons. They are logical reasons. But they are not the whole truth. What is the whole truth? Ethan asked, his voice husky with emotion. Vivian turned to face him, her eyes searching his. The streetlight caught her eyes, making them softer, warmer, more vulnerable than he had ever seen them. The truth is that the door you opened was not a mistake, she said, her voice filled with a newfound honesty. It was the first honest thing that has happened to me in years, and I do not want to go back to pretending it did not. Ethan could not breathe, could not think, could only feel the weight of her words, the profound significance of her confession. I do not want to go back either, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She smiled, a real smile, full, unguarded, illuminating her entire face. Then maybe we do not have to. She stood, her movements graceful and deliberate. He stood as well, mirroring her actions. They faced each other in the dim light, the world around them fading away, the universe shrinking to this single, precious moment. This is the best mistake I've ever made, Ethan said, his voice filled with emotion. Vivian reached for his hand, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through his veins. She held it tight. She'd bring drawings home from school, those crayon-smudged masterpieces created specifically for her. A beaming Lily asking, "When's Miss Vivian coming back?" Evenings melted into a cozy blur of animated films. Lily nestled against Vivian on the couch, both fast asleep before the credits rolled, surrounded by talking animals performing their magical adventures on screen. Ethan hadn't felt this grounded, this optimistic in years. He felt like he was constructing a life, brick by brick, a foundation built on something real, something with the promise of longevity. Then Marcus noticed. Marcus Sullivan, the senior vice president of operations, was a company fixture, a veteran of 15 years. He occupied a seat just 2 away from Vivian at the mahogany expanse of the boardroom table. He was the epitome of corporate polish, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes, leaving them cold and assessing. Ethan was emerging from Vivian's office late one Thursday afternoon when the elevator doors whispered open, revealing Marcus. His gaze flickered over Ethan, then settled on the closed office door. His face remained impassive, but a glint, sharp and predatory, sparked in his eyes. "Cole, right?" Marcus inquired, his voice smooth as polished stone. "The new project lead." "Yes, sir. Spending a lot of time up here lately." The words were casual, almost conversational, but Ethan felt a prickle of unease. "The project requires close collaboration," Ethan replied, keeping his tone neutral. Marcus smiled, that familiar, unsettling rictus. "I'm sure it does." He continued past Ethan, leaving a chill in the air. Ethan stood rooted to the spot. A cold dread began to coalesce in his chest, a feeling of foreboding that lingered long after Marcus had disappeared down the hall. The following week, Marcus made an appearance at one of their project progress meetings. He remained a silent observer, perched in a corner chair, his gaze sweeping the room, his pen scratching across a notepad. He didn't offer a single comment, question, or suggestion. He just watched, judged, recorded. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus extended his hand to Ethan. "Impressive work," he said, his voice laced with a subtle, almost imperceptible edge. "Very impressive, especially for someone who was filing reports 2 months ago." Ethan forced a smile, the muscles in his face tight with effort. "Thank you." After Marcus had departed, Vivian shut the door, her expression grim. She turned to Ethan. "He's fishing," she stated flatly. "For what?" "Anything he can use. Marcus has been vying for my position for years. If he perceives a weakness, a vulnerability, anything he can leverage against me, he'll exploit it. Should we? We should maintain course. Business as usual. We're managing a project. That's all anyone needs to be aware of." But Ethan observed the tension etched in her shoulders, the subtle clenching of her jaw. She was worried, and despite her composed facade, the anxiety was palpable. 2 weeks later, the board requested a review. Unscheduled, immediate, ominous. Vivian was summoned into a closed session, the heavy oak door closing behind her with a decisive thud. She emerged an hour later, her face a carefully constructed mask of composure, but her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. "They asked about you," she revealed, her voice low and strained. Ethan's stomach plummeted. What did they ask? Why I entrusted the project to someone with limited experience. Whether my judgment was compromised. Whether there was any conflict of interest. What did you tell them? I emphasized your results speak for themselves. I presented the data, the overwhelmingly positive client feedback, the dramatic efficiency improvements. They possess no concrete evidence, only insinuation. Suspicion is enough. Vivian met his gaze, her eyes conveying a complex mixture of determination and apprehension. Not if we conclude this project powerfully. The final presentation is in 3 weeks. If you deliver a resounding success, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge I made the correct decision. And if I falter, then Marcus wins. The words hung heavy in the air, the unspoken consequences looming large. Ethan immersed himself in the project, consumed by an unrelenting drive. He worked 18-hour days, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline. He meticulously refined every detail, rehearsed every slide until the words were seared into his memory, performed countless scenario analyses until his eyes burned with fatigue. Vivian rigorously reviewed his work, pushing him relentlessly, demanding perfection. She ceased joining them for dinner. The calls became infrequent and formal. Their interactions were confined to project updates, devoid of any personal connection. Lily noticed the shift. One evening, she climbed into Ethan's lap as he hunched over spreadsheets, her small face etched with concern. "Is Miss Viv angry with us?" she whispered. "No, kiddo. She's simply occupied with her work." "Does she still like us?" Ethan pulled her close, his heart aching. "She still likes us." But a seed of doubt had been planted, and he wasn't entirely convinced anymore. The night before the presentation, Ethan sat alone in his apartment, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face. Everything was meticulously prepared. The numbers were unassailable. The presentation was flawless. But his hands trembled nonetheless. If this failed, he risked losing his job, losing the extraordinary opportunity that had been entrusted to him. Vivian risked her credibility, her hard-earned reputation. And whatever fragile connection they had been forging, whatever hopeful future they had begun to envision, would collapse under the crushing weight of corporate politics and unfavorable optics. He considered calling her, reaching out for reassurance, but ultimately decided against it. He went to bed, but sleep eluded him, his mind racing with anxieties and possibilities. The presentation was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning. Full board attendance. Marcus would be there, a silent, watchful presence. So would the CFO, the head of investor relations, all the individuals whose opinions held the power to shape their destinies. Ethan arrived at 9, his nerves stretched taut. Vivian was already in the conference room, standing by the window, gazing out at the cityscape. She turned as he entered, her expression unreadable. "Are you prepared?" she inquired, her voice devoid of inflection. "I think so." "Think isn't sufficient. I am ready." She nodded slowly, then walked back to the window, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She remained there for a long moment, silent and still. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Regardless of the outcome today, you performed exceptionally well. I want you to know that." The words sounded like a farewell, a resigned acceptance of the inevitable. Ethan felt a pang of despair. He hated it. The board members filed in, their faces grim and expectant. Marcus took his seat directly across from Ethan, his smile fixed, cold, and devoid of warmth. Ethan began. He guided them through the intricacies of the revamped system, methodically presenting the before and after metrics. Client retention had soared by 22%. Processing time had plummeted by 38%. Revenue per client was up. Costs were down. Every projection had been not only met but exceeded. He fielded questions with confidence, skillfully deflected criticism, and remained composed even when Marcus launched pointed inquiries about resource allocation and timeline management. Vivian remained silent, a steadfast observer. She didn't intervene, didn't offer assistance. She allowed him to demonstrate his capabilities, to prove his worth. When he concluded, the room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. The CFO spoke first, his voice firm and authoritative. "This is solid work, Cole. Better than solid." The head of investor relations nodded in agreement. "I want to implement this company-wide. How quickly can we scale?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression inscrutable. He remained silent. Vivian rose to her feet, her gaze sweeping the room. "I believe this effectively addresses any lingering doubts concerning my judgment," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. Ethan was the right choice. The results unequivocally demonstrate it. The board concurred. The meeting adjourned. People shook Ethan's hand, offered congratulations, discussed the next phase of implementation. Marcus departed without uttering a single word, his face a mask of simmering resentment. Once the room had emptied, Vivian turned to Ethan, the corners of her mouth lifting in a genuine smile for the first time in weeks. "You did it," she said, her voice soft with relief. "We did it." "No, you did. I simply provided the opportunity." They stood there, the space between them charged with unspoken emotions. All the things they had carefully avoided saying, all the deliberate distance they had maintained. "I need to tell you something," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What?" "I nearly called you last night, to suggest that perhaps we should step back. That maybe this is too complicated. That maybe I'm not worth jeopardizing your reputation." Vivian's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. And I realized I don't want to step back. I don't care if it's complicated. Care about you, and Lily cares about you, and I think you care about us. She looked at him, really looked at him, her eyes searching his, seeking the truth. "I do care," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "More than I should. More than is logical." She paused, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Then stop being logical." Vivian moved closer, closing the gap between them until he could see the fine lines of exhaustion etched around her eyes, the weight of responsibility she carried. "I've spent my entire life being logical, being controlled, building walls. And then you opened a door, and everything I constructed began to crumble. Is that a bad thing? No, it's terrifying." She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his, holding it right there in the conference room, where anyone could walk in, where the cameras probably recorded everything. "But it's not bad. I want to do this right," she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "I want to protect you and Lily. I don't want you to lose your job because of me. I don't want her to lose stability because we were reckless." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we wait 6 months. We keep this private. Let the dust settle. Let people forget about Marcus and his suspicions. And then, when the time is right, we stop hiding." Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to protest that 6 months was an eternity. But he understood her reasoning. She was protecting them. Protecting Lily. 6 months, he said, squeezing her hand. 6 months, and then we build something real. Deal, she agreed, her voice soft but resolute. 6 months later, on a balmy evening in late May, Ethan stood on his porch, the setting sun casting long shadows across the lawn. Lily stood beside him, her small hand nestled in his. Vivian was on her other side, her presence radiating warmth and contentment. The three of them watched in comfortable silence as the sunset painted the sky in vibrant hues of orange, pink, and gold. Lily held both their hands, her grip tight and secure. She had been asking all week when Miss Viv was moving in. Ethan had deflected, offering vague assurances of soon. Not yet, but soon. Today, Vivian had finally delivered the news to the board, making their relationship official, weathering the raised eyebrows, the veiled questions, and the implicit judgment. She had stood firm, unwavering in her decision. Now she was here where she had been every weekend for the past 6 months, where she belonged. I was thinking, Vivian said quietly, her voice barely audible above the gentle breeze. Ethan looked at her, his heart filled with a sense of profound gratitude. About what? About building something new. The three of us, if you're willing. Lily looked up, her eyes wide with anticipation. Does that mean you're staying? Vivian crouched down, meeting her gaze directly. If you want me to, she said, her voice filled with tenderness. I want to, forever. Vivian's smile was soft, genuine, the carefully constructed walls completely gone, replaced by an open vulnerability. Forever sounds perfect, Lily declared, her face radiant with happiness. She stood, looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with a love that transcended words. He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. Together, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Together, she agreed, her voice a soft echo of his. And for the first time since that door had opened, since that impossible moment that should have ruined everything, Ethan felt complete. They had constructed something real, something that mattered, something worth every risk, every sacrifice. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in its final, breathtaking strokes of color. The three of them stood together, silhouetted against the twilight. And nobody wanted to go back to the way things were.